Welcome to Theater and Stream, a film podcast. I am Matt, that is Chuck, and this is episode 94. This is, of course, the show where we review one newly released movie and one movie available on streaming, hence the name of the show. And then at the end of the show, we tie the films together with a nice little cinematic theme. And today's theme, it's an ode to the king of cinema himself. We're talking about Spielbergian movies. That is, cinematic movies in the style of the director Steven Spielberg. First up, it's the currently in theaters movie, the long-awaited fourth film from director David Robert Mitchell. It's called The End of Oak Street. And then we're jumping back to a movie that actually just celebrated its 15th anniversary.
That's crazy.
The JJ Abrams passion project, Super 8. But I guess before we dive into either one of these films, I think kind of to kick us off today, we kind of need to answer the question of, what makes a movie Spielbergian? What are the hallmarks of a Spielberg movie? What are the hallmarks of a Spielberg homage movie or tribute movie? So Chuck, what do you think of when you think of Spielberg?
And it's funny, but ironically, it's like what that term to me has kind of like means. It's E.T. Unfortunately, it's like in terms of like what people are actually like aping, it's kids on bikes, riding around, government agents of some kind. There's some high concept, heightened reality thing going on, but the kids run towards it. They have an adventure, and you have a very, like it has an identity with its score. If you're imitating, this era, you got to have something that sounds like John Williams, but, is still kind of, modern in a sense, and I guess, yeah, ultimately it's just like how many, how much of his grammar can you lift? That's really the question. How many, parallax zooms can you incorporate into your movie? Not that I actually see people ripping that off necessarily, but, it's the kind of, crane work that he utilizes, and ultimately just like saccharine, sweet family fare. For the most part, that's what it's intended to be. Our movie today, I feel, kind of evolves, what a Spielbergian movie can be and do, much to this film's benefit, versus Super 8, which is more clearly just like, this guy's always been my hero, and I'm going to make a movie that means something to me based on growing up in the time when this era of his movies were coming out. Like that, because I'm not sure how old JJ Abrams was in the 80s, but he was the target audience, and it obviously worked.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think, you hit the nail on the head there. It's like movies about that juxtapose like some sort of monster or sci-fi or fantasy element that is juxtaposed with like a family story is kind of what I think of.
Yeah.
Like and a high reliance on visual storytelling. Like Spielberg is all about the visual storytelling. Specific movies like Spielberg movies. I think about like the movies, the summer blockbuster or family movies that he directed from like the mid 70s to like the early 90s. So like, Jaws, Close Encounters, E.T., Hook.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of movies are kind of what I think of. He's a man. I think he's directed. I was looking at his credits this morning, and he has 60 directing credits to his name. And so he is a man who has directed many different types of movies. But when you specifically think about his style, those are kind of the ones that I think of. But
Yeah.
yeah, do you want to jump right into the first one here? End of Oak Street. Why don't you? What did you make of this movie? It's not what I thought it was going to be. I'll tell you that.
No,
So
and I will say, like, upon seeing the reveal of the dinosaurs in the trailer, my initial thought was, this is so uninspired and boring sounding. How could they possibly make this interesting? And I don't know. I should have given Mr. Mitchell a lot more benefit of the doubt and credit, because you talk about a guy who's made very divergent, films between like the four that he has. He did like an indie movie about sleepovers, with like the myth of the American sleepover. He laid his claim to being the horror auteur of the moment back in 2015 when It Follows came out. And then he blew his blank check on this, a really misunderstood and underappreciated Pynchon-esque movie. Like, it's the movie that, I hold Inherent Vice in high regard, but that is a much more effective use of those tropes, in that style, with Under the Silver Lake. And now with this, it's like what if Jurassic Park was as mean-spirited and like dark as the Jurassic Park novel was versus the movie? Like what if Spielberg was truly open to some some really disturbing implications, that like aren't said out loud, like because there's a whole moment in that original Jurassic Park novel where John Hammond gets eaten by compies at the end of the story because he's kind of a dick, and he's supposed to kind of be the bad guy of the whole thing if there is one. And he couldn't do that. He wanted to have it be lighter, more redemptive. But this movie, the dinosaurs are fucking evil. They're animals, and they have no reason to have any fear of these little hairless monkeys running around, screaming at them. They don't know why they've been brought into their environment, but they're just another thing for them to eat. And that really fucked with me in a way that I didn't expect. And it really made the gravity of the whole situation work. Because there is a whole subgenre, particularly in like streaming fare. There's an example of it on, I think, Netflix right now called The Last House. It's like you don't want to have a lot of sets, so you just tell your story inside a home that you can do whatever the fuck you want to in, but the family's trapped there, they don't know why, and that is a shitty movie. This is how you do that kind of movie right, in my opinion. And it worked so well. It avoided a lot of the pitfalls and tropes that you do see in like survival stories. Where it's like there's a whole bunch of people who band together and there's all these shitty tropey dynamics that have to go into play with it. This is a lot more visceral and straightforward, and I really quite liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of in the same place where going into this, I thought this was going to be like the summer like dinosaur blockbuster. Maybe something that was on par with, I don't know, like one of the latter Jurassic Park movies. Maybe Jurassic Park 2 or 3 or something like that. Maybe not as bad as the Jurassic World movies. And yeah, what we get is something a little more interesting, where there's this streak of meanness running through this movie that I really like, where you could watch this movie as a normal blockbuster. I'm sure there are many people. I'll tell you, the families that were in the theater when I saw this totally probably went to this movie, had a fun time, had thought it was a fun action blockbuster. But there's this through line, this beating heart to this movie that is a little more mean that I like, and there's some really fucked up like implications going through this movie. And it actually reminds me more of like a Shyamalan movie because of
Okay,
that.
yeah.
Who himself, I mean, Shyamalan is a Spielberg devotee himself. He self-admittedly, like that's all people were talking about when The Sixth Sense came out. Like, is this guy the next Spielberg? And that was ultimately his kind of undoing. But there are these dark elements, these little plot details, these these questions that the ending brings about that are really like, whoa, this is not something I expected from this, $90 million summer blockbuster that was put out by Warner Brothers. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. The dinosaurs are scary. The dinosaurs are they're completely ambivalent towards, they could give a shit less about anything. They have no emotions. They're just, looking for their next meal. And I like that sort of, there's no humanity to them at all. And I loved all like the little, the family dynamics. Some of them, I will say, there are some weird, like dropped, like subplots in this movie, or what I assume are dropped subplots, where you can tell that there is definitely some footage on the cutting room floor, which, we'll get to. But other than that, I really, really enjoyed myself.
And like what really kind of like drove home to me that this was a lot more than what my initial, you know, perceptions of it were. Was the scene when the family like is coming to terms with the reality that they're living in. They've just seen all these people get fucking murdered, and the kids are like, "Are we gonna die?" And the dad's like, "God wouldn't let us die." And
Yeah.
and I was like, "Holy fuck!" Like that's crazy because like it's just set in 1982. It has like it had a tasteful way of showing us we were in 1982, like the Polaroid camera being a signifier, but it didn't go overboard like Stranger Things where they're wearing exaggerated 80s fashion. Like Stranger Things is like, this is what the 80s looked like to us. Looks, like we focus on the hallmarks of that era, but this I think more accurately showed what it really looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the sort of the warts and all sort of, like, people think back on the 80s, and yeah, it's completely like nostalgia goggles. They got where it's all, just like, this crazy like pop music and kids playing D&D in basements and going to the roller rink or whatever, and going to like drive-in movies. But this is more, yeah, this is definitely more so like a warts and all portrayal of the 80s, where you've got like, the dad's kind of an alcoholic, and he just lost his job, and he's trying to make ends meet by delivering
With the
pizzas.
with
And
the giant light like sign on
yeah,
top of the roof of his car that he has to hide in the garage so his wife doesn't see.
yeah,
Yeah,
so that she's not, yeah, embarrassed by it. And you have the wife who is acting out her sort of I don't know, fantasies, or her kind of her unsatisfying, desires with her suburban life through her writing. She writes in the basement, and nobody knows about it. Her kids don't even know. When the basement floods, her daughter's like, "What was down there?" And she's like, "Oh, just something important to me." It's like nobody even knows that she's doing these things other than her like book editor like neighbor. And so yeah, it's a warts and all portrayal of the 80s, and I really, really enjoyed that aspect.
the that one moment I referenced, I couldn't help but feel it was very meta. Because like if there's a god in this story, it's the writer. and,
Yeah.
and yeah, the writer wouldn't let us die.
Hmm. Well, it's such a hopeless situation. I found myself really reflecting on the premise after the movie got done, where I was like, God, this is one of the most hopeless like premises in like a movie ever, because you are transported millions of years to the past. You have no electricity, no water, a limited supply of food. There's nowhere to run. There's nobody to call. There's no phones. There's no civilization, and on top of all of this, you're being actively hunted by things you stand no chance of fighting off. And so it just like really, really drove home to me afterwards, like, wow, this is such a like fucked scenario. And there's no sugarcoating it to your kids. It's just like you're, I don't know exactly what the ages of the kids were. I guess probably like maybe like 16 and 12 maybe.
Yeah.
And they're of the age where they can see through your bullshit. There's no sugarcoating this situation. It's just like, you have the dad who's sort of relying on, the religious aspect, and then you have the mom who's kind of like, what does she say to him after he brings up the, maybe God will, he won't let us die, and then the mom immediately is like, don't say that. Like
You go to church on Christmas. It's like,
yeah,
you don't really believe this shit. Yeah.
yeah. And so that was, I really, really, enjoyed how dark they made it, but eventually, of course, you get your sort of your Deus Ex Machina, like time portals or time bubbles or whatever those things were supposed to be.
The dog that's been missing the whole fucking movie just heroically arrives at the appointed time to like save the boy at the end of the movie. Like, I don't know. I found Starbuck annoying. It's like what the fuck are you doing, Starbuck? Why aren't you just at home? Like...
yeah, he was definitely a dog that was, very misbehaved when he needed to be, and very well behaved when he needed to be. And this is definitely a movie that is in the eternal argument of cats versus dogs. This is a movie that is firmly on the dog side of things, because what do we see, like, over the course of this movie? Do we see like 3 cats be murdered, be killed, or we see a couple and then we hear one, we hear the Foley sound effects of another cat being murdered in the woods or something like that. So this is definitely a dog movie if there ever was one.
For sure. I mean, like, we should bring it up, like, because this movie's kind of, not, people aren't really chatting about this, but they are chatting about the AI dog podcast that they made.
Oh yeah. Gosh, like, it's so bad.
What an ill-advised, endeavor as far as promotion goes. Because I don't know, in my day job, I have to like report on the data center issue in North Dakota in specific, and there is such an anti-AI sentiment, not just amongst creatives, but just amongst your salt of the earth, just regular old, voter who doesn't even realize they're using AI half the time. They'll use AI to make an anti-AI like poster, like it's ironic, but yeah. Like,
yeah, it seems to me like the only people who are actually on board with AI are like Silicon Valley tech bros and like restaurants that use like shitty AI to make photos of their food for some reason, like really, really uncanny valley photos of like their menu items, or to make their like menus. Because I see so much of that nowadays, and it was so ill-advised. This movie is unfortunately not tracking to do very well, like box office wise. And I really hope that if there's anything good to come out of that stupid AI internet thing that they made, I hope it proves the adage of there's no such thing as bad publicity. Because this movie isn't really on anybody's radar, or it wasn't until they made that AI dog podcast, and then a bunch of people were talking about the end of Oak Street just because of its shitty AI marketing. And so I hope that at least puts it on people's radar.
Is it like just because the youth care, like, are more interested in seeing their culture be brought forward, like we see with Backrooms and like Obsession, like, because that's what Gen Z's come into the theater for. Like what, like, yeah, I don't really see them getting excited about this movie unless more people tell them, hey, there's more to this than just your parents' nostalgia. Like there's something here for you. And because I think they would actually get a lot out of it if they gave it a chance.
Yeah.
But I guess,
yeah, definitely.
So let's, I guess, right off the bat, let's commend the script here, because it is
Mm.
devoid of an affliction that has cursed cinema for a long time. At least 15, 16 years now. I guess with like, did Joss Whedon's Avengers really pollute the mind of the Hollywood screenwriter into thinking that they just needed to be, comedians all the time, even when it wasn't warranted?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah. I mean, the MCU, just Marvel movies in general, are responsible for that. Um, I don't know what you would call it, like blockbuster movie quipping, I guess is kind of what I would call it, where every character talks the exact same. They all have some sort of quip to give, even during serious moments. That is probably when I hate it the most. That is the peak, like Matt Miller hatred of movie quipping, is when you have a very serious scene and then somebody just undercuts it with a quip, and
Pop
it's
culture reference, insert here.
yeah, exactly. And so yeah, it's like this movie is completely devoid of that, and it was so, I think, as you said in our doc, it was so refreshing, and it was so like, this movie has jokes and it has funny stuff, but it's like within the context. It's not just like a complete non sequitur. This movie's got jokes about dinosaur shit and
Yes.
dinosaurs fucking on the side of a house, and it works because it's there, it's happening, and it's not just some stupid non sequitur bullshit.
God, the whole idea of a guy just like posing for a canned, like 80s photo on a Polaroid photo like that in the midst of everything they're experiencing. Like when he does it and then he's like, "Can we fucking go now?" like that made me laugh.
Yeah, yeah, that was great. So why don't we should talk about I guess the whole like ending sequence, because this is probably the most interesting part of the movie to me. The ending, and what the sort of the questions that brings up, because correct me if I'm wrong here,
Big
but
fat
my
spoiler
interpret
warning right here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, don't, I mean, if you haven't seen this, yeah, do not uh listen any further, do not watch any further, because so my interpretation is basically that as in Anne Hathaway's character, basically lets her family number two, she lets family number two get transported back to the past, except for her husband. She basically steals the husband from the other version of herself, and lets the daughter, the son, and the other version of her get transported to the past. And presumably they go back to the past, and they all either die a horrible death or never figure out the way back this time, because she doesn't create a paradox. It's more so of like a multiverse
Yeah.
type situation, where they presumably don't find their way back to the present, because we see at the very very end there, everybody's having a barbecue in their nice new house that her book money bought for them. And you have the family of the neighbor girl is there. They survived because presumably the neighbor girl went and saved her family too. And there's two versions of her. That was the coolest thing about the ending, was that the neighbor girl saved her other self. And so now there's two versions of her in this timeline. And so yeah, do I have that right? Is
Yes.
there
You have that
Okay.
completely right. Cuz like the whole premise is that there's these portal storms happening over this neighborhood. So for like presumably a few days leading up to it, there's just these portals opening up all the time. They're either depositing things from the past in the past, or maybe taking things back. And then there's one big massive portal blast that takes the whole neighborhood, all of Oak Street or whatever. And because of the way that the whole wormhole thing works, the portal that they jump in the past brings them to the moments before, like 15 minutes beforehand. And yeah, it's like that's exactly what happened. It's like they wound up in another universe basically, like an adjacent one to theirs. There might not be any like significant differences between the two. And yeah, they just happened to make their happy ending, which I guess goes into her being a writer. It's like she wants to claim the like her story, the story that she wants for herself after surviving that experience. And they just happened to be placed exactly where they needed to be to stop Ewan McGregor from going home and getting sucked back in time. It's and the implications of that are unsaid, but they're there, and that's exactly what happened. And yeah, and the duplicate girl, like the neighbor girl, kind of confirms that. It's like she could have called herself and said, "Get your family out of there." Mm-hmm. She could have done that. She called all the neighbors. She saved all of them, at least the ones that were like in the interview thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's fucking bizarre. And it's like, I don't know how they could have gotten everyone to believe her and listen to her in time, in like the 10 minutes that she had. Like that doesn't...
That's why I think the neighbor things, like on the TV, the neighbor interviews might be reshoots, because it was very odd where she goes and she calls, her the dad, and then she calls all of those neighbors on the phone, but she never mentions the fact that she called the neighbors. And so I have this feeling that like little newscast segment at the very, very end where all the neighbors are being interviewed and they're like, yeah, she gave me a call and I didn't know what to think, but I listened to her. That I feel like that was a reshoot to make the ending less dark, I guess.
Yeah, even though it just compounded the darkness.
Yeah. But there are definitely, I alluded to it earlier, but there are some things in this movie that really like scream to me like scenes that were cut, or even like entire subplots that were cut, because we haven't mentioned up until this point, this is a lean ass movie where I think this thing clocks in at about 100 minutes, and there are these like the movie alludes to this sort of subplot of, or thematic subplot of the sort of death of the American dream, where we already talked about this, where everybody has their problems under the surface, but we only see the neighborhood block party at the beginning, where the neighbors are being all chummy and everybody's getting along and everybody's going along to get along, and it's sort of that surface level suburban niceness. And then once the shit hits the fan, it's every man for himself. Everybody's running to their car to get away, and everybody's running around like chickens with their heads cut off. Nobody's actually checking in on their neighbors. Everybody's just letting everybody else die. And there are these little like things that really like stuck out to me as like extraneous plot lines that got cut out, like the bully subplot, and the son like smokes cigarettes.
Yeah, that's brought up. We never actually see him token, like he's not like lighting, smoking cigarettes, like, like in his room while they're barricaded in their house or anything like that.
Yeah, and like like the daughter like starting the relationship with the girl that her brother has a crush on, the sort of, it's hinted at that she is either a lesbian or bisexual, and that just kind of, I don't know, that's just all set dressing. That doesn't really go anywhere. I think we see her holding hands with one of the duplicate girls at the very, very end during the last
I
scene.
didn't
But
catch that.
yeah, yeah. So it's just kind of, yeah, it's stuff like that that I'm like, okay, there's definitely some deleted scenes here. There has to be some deleted scenes because I'm assuming, the bully subplot and the son smoking cigarettes subplot. I have to assume that that has something to do with, again, like I had said, sort of that sort of surface level, like, yeah, everything's fine with our family, we're all good over here, and then but underneath everybody has their problems, where the dad has the alcohol problem, the mom has the unfulfilled life problem, the daughter has the problem of, wrestling with her sexuality, and the son presumably has a problem with, I don't know, I guess, what would you call it, like acting out, or teenage angst, I guess, where he's smoking cigarettes and he breaks the bully's
Brother's
brother's
arm.
arm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
so there's something there where I have a feeling that they wanted to make the son a little more like rebellious than he actually ended up being portrayed as in the movie.
But I guess like what kind of worked for me though was that like once the shit hit the fan, you know, he kind of you just reverted to childhood. He just became a little boy running around with
Yeah.
his like 1980s like like archery kit. And like
Yeah, that doesn't do anything.
yeah,
Just
well,
completely useless.
like I was literally waiting. I was like, is he gonna actually hit something with the like? Do those things actually work? Like what is he accomplishing by carrying that around? It finally serves a purpose. Like towards the end of the movie, during the scene that was categorically the one that like made me like crawl out of my like under my seat. I was just like, oh no, no, thank you. The giant snake. Oh
Yeah.
my god, I hated that so much. But like I call bullshit on the fact that it would be able to slither silently, being that big. You're telling me it's not knocking over a chair somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
But I
Hmm.
get it, because like when they're
Yeah,
all,
they needed it for the suspense. Yeah.
but that's the thing. Like while like there weren't any of those required character moments, that you typically see in movies like this, where it's like
Mhm.
there's just all these extraneous, and disposable survivors that we get to know long enough just to see them die. Like they're just killed off, like in the background, or like or while they're running from place to place. Like all those people are just cannon fodder,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, the neighbor, the douchebag next door
yeah,
neighbor, and the
played by my boy. I gotta make sure I pull his name up again. PJ Byrne. That
yeah.
man has had quite the career. He's one of those guys. He's certified. He's got his license to just be in any fucking movie and just deliver. Because
Yeah.
like when he's exasperated about the shit pile, like that was I loved that whole part.
Yeah. It's
But
like, you
like
did this. Yeah.
but like once Ewan McGregor's killed, the movie doesn't fucking stop. It's just, oh, we have big snakes. Ooh, we got big gators. Ooh, we got flying dinos that will just carry you off to get mangled and eviscerated. Like
Mhm.
they're just constant like that before they finally like jump through that portal at the end. Like I was like, oh god, please let it stop. Like it just
Yeah.
but it just kind of drove home. Like there's no like way where we have a flash forward and we see how they've acclimated and gotten better, at surviving in this environment. No, write it down. Nobody transported back to this dinosaur time period is gonna make it. Not a single fucking one.
No,
Yeah,
no, yeah, yeah. Everybody, yeah. There's no plot armor in this movie, which is, or like you go in thinking, okay, this entire family has plot armor, and nobody's gonna die. And then yeah, when Ewan McGregor gets his leg, ripped off. At first, when that happened, when his leg got like chewed off, I was like, oh, okay, that's pretty interesting because my immediate thought was, oh, they're gonna have to like stop. He's gonna still get out of this, and they're gonna have to stop the bleeding, and he's gonna limp to the portal, and everything's gonna be fine. But then like you know, 20 seconds later, it's just like, nope, he's dead. Like he is fully dead. And
We get to listen to his bones getting crushed in the mouth of like a Spinosaurus or whatever that thing was.
yeah,
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 that was insane. It like completely out of pocket, completely like unexpected, and yeah, a lot of the deaths are just really like messed up. The Asian lady, the librarian lady, how she like basically sacrifices herself to the like Jurassic crocodiles at the end there, and
what a hero. Yeah.
yeah, the hero of the movie definitely, and yeah, all that stuff was yeah brutal, absolutely brutal, absolutely just yeah. These things they have no dinosaurs have no souls, and that's kind of what I loved about the portrayal of them in this movie, and um, yeah, great. I don't know. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we moved on?
I also appreciate the restraint that it came with needle drops. And I just wanted to, also like appreciate the song that they chose. The, I know it more from like the modern like dance remix by Eric Prides, but the song "Call on Me," the daughter, is in her feels, sits down in the family car, plugs in an 8-track, and listens to that song. Like I forget what it's framed around, but like I can't remember if there was a dino in the house in that sequence or not. But
No, it was just kind of them like, you know, trying to make come to terms with their situation, I think, because my sort of feeling from that scene was basically that she was sitting there, sort of hopelessly thinking about their situation and sort of maybe coming to the realization that I love this song, and this is probably going to be the last time in my
yeah,
life that I ever hear this song because eventually, the car's going to run out of, battery, and once the batteries are out, that's it. You're not interacting with pop culture in any way whatsoever
and
ever again.
and you see, and I think that kind of speaks to like why, this was so stripped down in that sense. It didn't just jingle keys at us with pop culture. It was so focused on the here and now, what was happening. Yeah, it was a great creative choice. And it kept me from getting bored by looking at something that used to be prominent way back when. It's and it just restored my faith in Mitchell too a little bit. It's like even if this movie doesn't make back its budget, this guy has shown that he can fucking do pretty much anything. As
Yeah.
long as he doesn't wind up in IP and shitification, land. It's this is a dude who maybe even deserves to like make an Apple TV series someday. Like this guy can do it. So I just hope that his career doesn't take a ding for making a great movie. I hate it when that happens to somebody. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Just from the business end of it.
Yeah, except next time, Mitchell, we got to get Mitchell, we got to get him on the rotating schedule more than every like 7 years
No
or whatever.
shit.
Because it's
Yeah.
been like, gosh, I don't know why it took so long for this to come out. It seems like maybe it was just stuck in development hell for so long. I guess I don't know the story behind that, but God, it's Under the Silver Lake was so long ago.
For real. Like he was basically put in director jail because of that movie,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And now he's out of it. And yeah, like he is satisfying the conditions of his parole, Your Honor. Leave my boy alone. But somebody who is in a different kind of director jail, is up next. He's JJ Abrams is a guy. He's a man, and we used to have such faith in him. And it's like the fact that these are both Bad Robot Productions is pretty rad, because that has also lost its luster. The vaunted deal that he had with Warner Brothers produced exactly like one TV show that got canceled in a season, and not much else. So it was good to revisit Super 8 and remember why he had us all excited in the first place. Because the from the first trailer for this, and I was, like many people, very zazzed, but I was a little like disappointed with certain aspects of this movie then that I still am. But I
Mm.
appreciate the stuff I liked even more. This go around. The the alien in this, he hid the shark a little too much. Like that's my big overall takeaway. The alien needed to be more present and involved.
Yeah.
And it's not quite as bad as Disclosure Day, which is kind of like the nadir of what Spielbergian means in the modern day. I don't know if you watched that turd or not.
No.
But they hid the shark literally until like the last scene of that one. Because the aliens use telepathy to like mask what they really look like, so you think they're just a bird. It's like they did really goofy shit in that movie, but in Super
Mhm.
8 here, yeah, it's like this is the seed that birthed Stranger Things. Like
Mhm.
the complete frauds that are the Duffer Brothers just looked at this formula and blueprint and said, we're gonna make our whole TV show this. Even
Mhm.
down to like the music, the end credit music for this is the God. What is it? Is it like the Don't Bring Me Down?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Like, yeah, like but it has a, like, this movie has a vibe that I still think rings out even today, in spite of how overplowed that field has become. Oh no, I just got
Oh boy.
spooked.
Get scared. Yeah, I mean, this is like, I remember when this, I
We're not
mean, we
quite
were,
dead.
I mean,
We're not quite
it was
dead.
15 years ago. As I said in my intro, this movie just celebrated its 15th anniversary, and we were, we would have
Yeah, go
been
help mommy, and then we'll
in
be ready to
college when
go.
this came out, the both
Yeah,
of
go
us.
help
And I,
mommy.
I distinctly remember, um, this is a movie that at the time was a victim of its own hype and marketing. Like, this movie was so overhyped, and people expected this huge bombastic summer blockbuster, and instead we get depressed dads and like
Yeah,
teenage crush storylines. And I
I love you
remember
too.
that there was this,
I love you too.
after the general public finally saw this, there was this sort of palpable collective sense of like, oh, that's it? Like
Yeah,
that's what this was? Like that's what all this hype was about? And it didn't help that, Abrams was coming off Star Trek, he was coming off, Lost had just ended. He had I know he didn't direct it, but Abrams is like so tied into the Cloverfield movie. And
yes,
so
yeah,
people were like, "Oh, this is going to be just like Cloverfield. It's going to be like this huge hyped up thing with all this like weird lore to it." And nope, it was not that at all. And it's just kind of, this movie, it's a reminder of the talent that he once was, where he spends so much time in his career, or he spent so much time at this point in like intellectual property land, where he's just going from Star Trek to Star Wars to, or I guess even before that, Mission
Mission
Impossible
Impossible.
to Star Trek to Star Wars. And it's like, God, give him something original again, like please God. And the yeah, the popular when people think about this movie nowadays, the popular line that I have seen a lot is like, "Oh, this was Stranger Things before Stranger Things ever existed." And I think that's a bit reductive. I get it. I get where it's coming from. But this movie has a through line of sadness and this emotionality running through it that I don't think Stranger Things has. And it doesn't stoop to the same level of nostalgia porn that Stranger Things does. You get the sense JJ Abrams did actually live, through this time period, whereas the Duffer Brothers are like 80s kid pretenders, where they were 90s kids. When you go, and I went and looked up their ages, and they're our age, or they're closer to our age
Yeah,
than being
if
80s
they were
kids.
born
And
in the '80s, it was at the back end, and they don't
yeah,
really
it was.
remember it. Yeah,
Yep. And and yeah, it's this movie is it is, we live in a time when we're awash with like Gen X and millennial nostalgia in the media, and we have been for the last
Okay.
decade or so. And this movie, the vibe this movie is trying to give, it was a rarer thing in
It was
2011.
novel, you know?
It was novel. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was much more novel in 2011. And when you watch it nowadays, you kind of have to put yourself in that headspace where it's like, okay, this was before Stranger Things. This was before all of the or a lot of the Spielberg homages that we got, and I liked it a lot. I honestly, I liked it a lot more this time around. I was in the when I first saw this, I was firmly in the camp of people that were like, "Oh, that's it. That's bullshit. Like this is bullshit. What this is not what this movie was supposed to be." And I liked it a lot. To I separated myself from expectations this
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
I liked it a lot more.
And that's the cool thing about our format, is because like we all have our immediate reactions to the theatricals, but it's like there is something that happens when something's allowed to stew in pop culture a little bit. And
Yeah.
in this case, yeah, it deserved a lot more credit, for what it was trying to actually do, versus. And it's funny, we went this until now. We could have brought up Cloverfield on the last movie, just because there's a lot of articles on the internet right now about why it's like, even though it's not confirmed or even alluded to in any way, that is a Cloverfield sequel.
Oh, weird.
Yeah,
Interesting.
there's people doing that, and a true Cloverfield head would know that wormholes were not involved. Like at least with at least with the Cloverfield movie that changed with the Cloverfield paradox, I guess.
Mhm.
But is but it's true, because it's like this is a very more straightforward thing. There's nothing esoteric going on for you to
Mhm.
decipher. What's up,
Yeah.
buddy?
Yeah, and I think that
I think they're your
with
Crocs.
to
I
bring this
think they're
back
by
to
the
the
front door.
Spielberg thing, and also to bring this back to a concept that you brought up at the beginning of this podcast, the kids on bike concept.
Yeah,
Um, this type of movie lives and dies by the quality of the kids that you have, the quality of the acting, the quality of the believability, and this is, the thing that I think makes this movie very successful are the quality of the kid actors, especially Elle Fanning. This was the movie that shot Elle Fanning off into space, and there's not a weak link, I don't think. There usually is when you have a bunch of kid actors, and I don't think there's a weak link in the chain here. I think they're all great. I like the sort of personality. Each one of them kind of encompassed a certain like personality type when it comes to kids in the 80s. You got the fat kid, you've got the kid who likes to like blow stuff up with fireworks, like the pyromaniac. You got the sort of all-arounder kid, our protagonist kid who has the crush on the one girl in their group, and
and the
I
dead
really, really like
mom.
them all.
He's got the dead
Yeah,
mom problem.
he's got the dead mom. Yeah, and I really liked all of them, and I especially liked the fat kid. He was great. I loved all his like lines. Like
Well, and like
the
and one thing that I really liked about him in particular,
yeah
was like the moment when the main character is like they have their like their final confrontation and blow up because Elle Fanning is like more into the protagonist versus the fat friend, and the fat friend has a crush on her, and that's
yeah.
why he wanted her to be involved.
Hmm.
And like I just thought that was very honest, I guess, in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah, that was great, and yeah, I love that aspect and all his little lines, like
With you?
production value when they're filming the movie, and
I
when
got
they're in the
this. I
diner,
know
and
this.
he's like the other friend says like, "Excuse me, can I get another order of fries because my friend here is fat?"
Yeah,
And then he's like, "At least I don't need a booster seat or whatever." And I actually laughed out loud at the when they're like running through all the houses in that neighborhood, sort of towards the end, and he just starts drinking like the Coke that's on
Yeah.
the counter,
Yeah.
and the kid's like, "Stop!" He's like, "That Coke, it's not yours," and he's like, "I'm thirsty. I'm in a war zone. I'm thirsty," or whatever. That was great, and yeah, just all of the kids in this are great, and yeah, especially I'll say it again, especially Elle Fanning. I mean, she. This was like the movie. I still remember the another thing from when this movie came out was people were talking about like, oh, Dakota Fanning's sister is gonna be an actress now. She's gonna be in a movie, and everybody was sort of, um, I don't know. I guess skeptical of that fact back then, where they were like, Elle Fanning's gonna be in a movie, and then this she was in this movie and she was great.
And I mean, like, 4 years later, she was in the Neon Demon. Like that. It's like,
Yeah.
like her career really did like take off to the point where, yeah, it's like she's doing any kind of thing,
Mhm.
and not just a studio film. And
Yeah.
and I think it's because like she had like like as with reality, there was just a maturity to her in terms of like like how like when you compare it to like the kid the young boys, like in the group, it's like she's more developed, she's more emotionally like mature, and and that dynamic kind of worked. It's like because didn't she like when she pulls up in her, is it her dad's car, like her drunk
Yeah.
dad's car to go, go film at the train. And I guess like we haven't even talked about it, but like that's the set piece of the movie.
Oh yeah.
And like
Incredible.
it's
Yeah.
it's incredible, and it does kind of get back to that kind of spectacle towards the end. But like I remember that being the most impressive part,
Mhm.
like at the time, and I still kind of miss that kind of grounded scope and scale to like having train cars flying around. But
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's got to be like. I sort of forgot about that scene. I mean, I remember it being impressive at the time, but when it happened, when I saw it this time, I was like, "Gosh, this has got to be like top 10 like scenes of spectacle from like the 2010s because you've got just like all this shit happening that is just like the exploding train station and like the cars are like ramping off one another and like flying in the air because of it, and the the one car that has all of like the explosive canisters in it like lands on the ground and all the canisters start like blowing up individually, and it's nuts. It's absolutely crazy, and that was so impressive, incredibly impressive.
and and I don't like, and then they built up to it too. Like I don't know, like this movie like does have moments to breathe, and
Mhm.
to like actually like unlike unlike the end of Oak Street, where it was just kind of like one crisis after another. But
Mhm.
this one kind of fits the patter a little bit better. And I guess that this brings wants me to bring up this point. It's like
Yeah.
is Spielbergian just what we call an Abrams movie?
Well, I think it's definitely morphed into that. I mean, whether he deserves the moniker or not, I think that Abrams has subsumed Spielberg as far as like instead of people saying Spielbergian nowadays, people will say, this is an Abrams movie, or this is an Abrams-like movie, or this is a movie emulating Abrams, and yeah, I mean he's like the guy that has basically taken on the Spielberg like the modern day Spielberg equivalent, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the T mover. He's not T move. That's unfair. He's the Amazon Basic version
He's
of Spielberg.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and speaking of, I think the thing, of course, that does sort of make a Spielberg movie is the weaving of these high concept fantasy or sci-fi elements with the family story. And I'm curious, what do you make of all of the sort of, you know, emotional elements or familial elements of this movie as far as the storyline with the father and or I should say the storyline with both of the fathers and
Yeah.
them sort of reconciling and the dead mom. And what do you make of that?
Well, I guess first and foremost, I need to put out there that I completely just ignored a line of dialogue every time I watched this movie, but I was under the impression that he had gotten drunk and been drunk at work and caused the accident that killed the
Oh,
mom.
same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was always what I assumed it was. And so I'm a little like, huh, yeah, I think it's a little unfair to blame this guy for calling in sick. You know, like it's like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'd feel
No, I
differently if I were, in the dad's shoes, but
no, I think you're right. Yeah, it's there's a weird sort of there's a weird choice there where they didn't
got a little
decide to
toys
go
in
for the
there.
jugular kind of on that with that aspect. I think that it maybe would have made the other dad, the drunk dad, Elle Fanning's dad, a little bit too unlikable if he would have actually been the one who like basically killed her or was the reason why she was killed. And I think that having him just kind of call in sick and then her picking up the shift maybe makes him a little bit more likable because he's not directly responsible for her death. I think that was kind of the choice there, why they made that choice. But I agree with you. Yeah, it's like, okay, why they're stretching. I don't know why Kyle Chandler couldn't have like been like it was an accident a little bit sooner than
yeah,
he did, I guess.
yeah,
Um, but he does get around. Eventually, he does come around, and I think that's literally his exact line. When they're in the car, and he's like, "It was an accident." He says that under his breath, and yeah, I did really like all that stuff. I think that Chandler did a good job of playing a more depressed version of Coach Taylor from Friday Night Lights. That's
yeah,
that's basically what he was doing, and I loved the one thing I absolutely loved, probably the most Spielbergian shot or element of this entire movie is the accident sign, the scene that opens up the movie where the guy's changing the number of days we've gone without an accident,
yeah.
and then he changes it to one. That is like quintessential Spielberg as far as everything in this movie.
No, like I'm glad you brought that up because when you talk about visual storytelling, it's the equivalent of like that Hemingway, like the saddest story, the saddest shortest story about baby shoes for sale, never worn.
Never one,
Like
yeah.
it's it's the equivalent of that because it just he gives you everything without anyone having to say a fucking word.
Hmm.
And and I guess like another one, like it's the one that like sticks with me. It's like it's the one I think of when I think of this movie. It's you put it on the dock, and I'm glad you did. It's the shot at the end, where the mom's necklace is like on that chain, and all
Yeah.
of the metal is getting magnetized and drawn towards the alien ship, and then he just lets it go.
Hmm.
You know, it was just so simple and beautiful and a lot more resonant. To me at this stage in my life than it was at the time. I think when I was younger, I thought it was cheesy,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's perfect. Just as far as
Yeah.
putting a
I
cap on
mean,
the experience goes.
yeah, something like that. I mean, that's such a like a tired trope typically in movies, like the idea of a character having some sort of heirloom from a character that has died, like oh, my wife died and I carry around a locket, or my like father died and I carry around his like I don't know, like his um, World War II medal or something like
Yeah,
that. And it's usually such a trite concept, but because they incorporated the necklace into the ending like that, I think that it works a lot better than it normally would. And I like that too a lot more this time around. And yeah,
yeah,
that was good. I guess if there's anything that in this movie that really doesn't work or just works kind of in a way that's lukewarm, it is the all the monster, like a lot of the monster stuff, as far as I agree with you where they waited too long to show it. It after a certain point, it almost gets comical the lengths the movie is willing to go to not show you the monster, where it's like, oh, we'll show you it in mirrors, and we'll show you it in reflections, and we'll show you its tail or whatever, but the movie goes to such extreme lengths to not show you it, and it gets a little superficial at a point. And when you finally do see it, it is a little, I don't know, it's a little anticlimactic, I guess, when
it
they finally
reminded me
show it.
a lot of the aliens from Signs, frankly.
Yes. Yeah, where it's like, okay, I guess that's it. And because it looks like a weird, like, I don't even know what you would call the alien in this movie. It's kind of like a mix of like a grasshopper, like to me, it looks like the like grasshoppers from Ants, but if they were
Or
like
from Bug's
aliens.
Life, you mean?
Yeah, from Bug's Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, from Bug's Life. But if they were like aliens, that's what it looks like to me. And
Yeah, it's
that is
more
probably
insectoid than reptilian. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And yeah, that's if there is any sort of kind of haphazard element in this movie, it is probably all the monster stuff because
Like, why did it have to kidnap people?
I guess I don't know. It was because idea that I got was that it was basically so its ship was made out of those cubes, all
Yeah.
of those little cubes, and basically it was collecting all of like the metal stuff in town because it had ripped all of the car engines out of those cars, and it was collecting a bunch of metal stuff to help, like, I don't know, fortify its
Okay.
spaceship,
Yeah.
because at the end there, I got the sense that its spaceship was, partially made up of the cubes and then partially made up of the
The
metal from
scrap
all of
metal.
this the scrap metal.
It
Yeah,
could
and
repair itself by just attracting shit. Okay.
yeah, but I have no idea why it was kidnapping people and stringing them up, like,
Yeah.
it was basically doing like the aliens thing from the movie Aliens, and I guess that was kind of lost on me.
Ready to go to
I guess
sleep.
maybe, I mean, if you really want to, like, put your own headcanon on it, I guess he was kidnapping people because these were like the people who were like trying, who could have like stopped him from accomplishing his mission
Yeah.
or
Yeah. It's
something,
like
Bas-
he took out the sheriff. Yeah.
yeah.
Like
Mhm.
anybody that saw like a witness to it. He was removing
Yeah.
witnesses. Okay, that makes more sense. Because if there's like a final like point I want to make about all of this,
Mhm.
it comes from our good friend Master Christopher Nolan, who, in responding to criticism of the Odyssey, basically took the whole internet commentariat, under his crosshairs, and just kind of said, just because you can identify a trope doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Like these things exist for a reason and they're used for a reason. So judge it on how well it's implemented, I guess, was his argument. Just because like your cinema sins can call something out, it doesn't actually mean it's a detriment to the experience.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I think the whole notion of being Spielbergian speaks to that. Like how effectively can you use the like certain familiar techniques or tropes, and in this instance, JJ Abrams made a pretty effective, very emotionally resonant movie. It's not a masterpiece, but it's pretty damn great.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I love you that you brought that up, the Nolan thing, because it also there that same argument has also been applied to things that people find like offensive from like a content perspective too, where it's like, just because you portray something in a movie that you find like morally reprehensible, it's not an endorsement of that thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's the same argument where it's like that is like something that people get so like get their panties so in a bunch about these days, where it's like just because this thing is portrayed in a movie or put into a movie, it clearly means that the director is endorsing it, and
Yeah.
that's not the case. And so yeah, it's the same sort of arguments, and I'm glad that you brought that up. But yeah, I mean, I guess as we sort of bring ourselves home here, let me ask you what's kind of tie these two movies together. Which of these movies does Spielberg better in your opinion? Does the lip service better, and why do you think that is?
Well, like Super 8, I guess, is a lot more plainly. Oh, you unplugged my headset. It's a lot more plainly, an homage. Whereas I think the end of Oak Street is Mitchell, taking what Spielberg walked with and running with it, in that sense. And I think they each represent something different. In that like one is an homage, and the other is showing us what new things can we do with it. Like how can we mess with the formula to get like I'm gonna use the word like and then it just escaped me, but subvert expectations in a sense.
Yes.
In a way that actually works really well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think,
Oh,
I mean,
I think you broke it.
Mitchell Mitchell is doing something
Because I
really
can't hear Matt
interesting with
anymore.
the Spielberg concept, but he's also making it his own.
Hang on,
Whereas
buddy. I need to sit you
Abrams
down
is
over
just
here for
flat
a
out
second.
emulating Spielberg, I think. And um, I think that, yeah, Mitchell's doing something a lot more interesting. Mitchell's doing there's a lot more interesting going as Super 8 is. And yeah, I think I would agree with you there. I think that End of Oak Street is the more interesting movie here. Well, let me ask you this as we kind of come to a close here. So we're getting a lot of Spielberg cinematic tributes in the last decade. Stranger Things, Midnight Special, The Vast of Night, Nope. Jordan Peele's Nope is definitely a Spielberg homage. Even the smaller movies like Summer of '84 or Super Dark Times.
Hmm.
So that's where we're at right now. But I think we're kind of leaving that period where I don't think we're gonna get many more Spielberg type movies in the next like 5, 10 years, and we're gonna transition to something else. And I gotta ask you, what do you think that is gonna be? Like as the Zoomers, as Gen Z becomes the directors, of the now. They kind of get to the age where the Gen Z auteurs are, coming up in the ranks of Hollywood. Who is the next director that we start seeing all these homages to?
Weird, because that's the thing. The reason that this is gonna start, like the shift that's gonna happen is
Hmm.
that all this '80s nostalgia is gonna go completely by the wayside, and it's
Yep.
gonna be the '90s and early aughts that we're gonna be you'll start seeing stuff about. But as far as like definitive filmmakers from those eras that people are likely to emulate, I don't know. We might start seeing more Coen Brothers type films, maybe, or
Mm.
I don't know. Like, do you think Gen Z are just gonna? Yeah, because that's the thing. Like Tarantino already had his imitators, and I don't
Yep.
know. And he's still making movies that are of a higher quality than Spielberg, I would argue. So I don't think he's not ripe for imitation yet
Mhm.
by the next generation. But I don't know. It's
You know,
tough to say.
I would say Nolan,
Yeah.
but Nolan is. I don't know if Nolan, I mean, there are certain things that Nolan likes, but I don't know if he has quite as definitive as a style as Spielberg, where you could like call it out. Um, I think about like, I don't know, maybe like Fincher? Like, do you think we're gonna see a lot of
Yeah.
like Fincher? Because you know, a lot of I think Gen Z, a lot of younger millennials, older Gen Z crowd likes Fincher a lot, and I think we could see a lot of people trying to imitate him. Um, we I don't think.
Especially if like their film school, as it were, was like YouTubers, like you like the commentary type, the essayists, like Every Frame a Painting, or like Thomas Flight, for example. Like those guys, like you have their their tastes, like like their biases, and while like those, I would categorize those guys as being like absolute film nerds, but they really do give Fincher his flowers, and they really do, I guess, promote his virtues. So I could see them getting adopted by somebody.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, honestly, probably Abrams too. I
Yeah,
mean, JJ Abrams is people are gonna, in the same way that Abrams emulated Spielberg, people are gonna start emulating Abrams. And also, I mean, to make an even further point on that, in the same way that Paul Thomas Anderson emulated Robert Altman, we're gonna start seeing directors emulating PTA. And I think, because I mean, PTA is a guy who I mean, he's never left. Where we have a lot of millennial filmmakers who are emulating PTA, but we're going to see a lot of Gen Z filmmakers also emulate PTA because of he just never stopped. I mean, the guy keeps making hits. I mean, we're going to see one battle after another imitators at some point probably. And so yeah, I could definitely see PTA being one of those guys.
I I just want to see a Gen Z kid make their Magnolia. That would be spectacular. Like
Yeah.
whatever it winds up being about, or even like yeah, like I want to see what Gen Z like like their perception of the '90s. Like I want to see their version of Boogie Nights. Like
Mhm.
not literally, but just like what is a touchstone from that moment that they could explore. There's a lot. There's a lot going on there, and
Yeah.
yeah. But I got a little boy here who's ready to hit the road and get to Bumpa's house. So thank you for joining us, and thank you, Matt, as always. It's always a pleasure, and we'll see you all next time.
Yep. See ya.